Hey there, welcome to the Millennial Book Junkie. Today I'm going to be talking about the books I read in January of 2025, and I have to say, I'm having a really good start to the year in terms of reading. This year, I hope to read 50 books, and in January, I read 5 books. I am personally a slower reader, so I usually can read a book every 5 days or so, mixing between ebooks and audiobooks and physical copies, and it still takes me like a month to read 5 books. So I'm a little bit of a slower reader, but I still have a really good time with all my books. So far I will say that this year I have just been kind of blown away at how much I've loved the books that I'm reading. I haven't had anything below like a 3 star yet, so that's good. That's always good news. And I've just had a good amount of 5 stars so far. So I'm really excited to share them with you today. So the first 5 star read and first read of 2025 for me was The Wedding People. I really, really loved this book. This book was about a young woman who is kind of at an all-time low, and she decides she's going to check into a really, really nice hotel that's like $800 a night, and she's going to have a night to herself, and she really feels like she deserves it because she's just getting out of a relationship. She feels really bad. She doesn't like her job, and she gets to this hotel, and unfortunately literally everyone at the hotel is there because of a wedding, aka the wedding people. It's filled with people that are literally just there for the wedding. So she gets there and she's like, oh. And the way she describes all the people that are there for the wedding is really hysterical. Just for example, like she's like standing in line to check in, and she sees these 2 women in front of her, and she basically calls one of them neck pillow because one's got a neck pillow, and the other one she calls high bun because she's got like a high bun, and she just like says neck pillow says this and high bun says that. And just the way that Alison Spock, I think is is the writer, just the way that she describes the characters and their banter, it's just like you're really there, you can really feel it. And you could tell that this author has read a lot of literature. I'm an English major and I read a lot of the classics, so I just feel like I could tell that the writing was trying to be like a commentary, a little bit of like on who these people were and what they were representing as being part of the wedding and the wedding people. And I just really liked it because I just got married last year, and definitely there is an air to wedding people. There's an air of excitement. There's an air of who's who and haven't seen that person in 5 years. And I really feel like Alison Spock really captures that in her book. And I really, really liked it. And so anyway, the main character eventually, starts to mesh with the wedding people. The bride to be just kind of like storms in on her, and like they form this relationship. And of course, stuff starts coming up from the past, and I'm not going to spoil it, but I just really had a lot of fun with this book. And you know me, I usually read like horror thrillers, but this one I really enjoyed. It was a book club pick, but I have just heard about it nonstop, and I really, really liked it. It was just so much fun. Like if you're ever looking for like a lighter read, although there is, some depressing elements of it. I mean, obviously this woman is really depressed when she gets to the hotel. So it's not like super happy, but I don't know, there's something also light and fun about it. And I really like the way that, the main character really meshes with the bride to be. I mean, I say mesh meaning like they're complete polar opposites, but like the way that they interact with each other is so great because one of them, the bride to be, is like really kind of like hyper and bubbly and kind of just like in her bride to be element, whereas this other woman, the main character, is more like depressed and stuff. And so I just really liked The Wedding People. I know that it was just like one of the top books of 2024, and I can see why. It was hysterical and it was sad, and it was also meaningful. I really, really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars, and I wish that I had a physical copy because I did read The Wedding People on my Kindle, and I really wish that I kind of had the physical copy of that because I just want to hold the book forever, and I want to reread it. It was really, really good. Really, really enjoyed it. The second book I read in January was The Night We Lost Him by Laura Dave. This was my first Laura Dave book that I've ever read, and I gave it 4 stars. The reason why I picked up this book, and I mentioned this in my January TBR, was because in Santa Monica in January, there was an opportunity to meet Laura Dave in a walking book club where we were going to walk around Santa Monica and chat with Laura Dave about this book. And I was really, really excited. I picked up this book about a week before the event because I was really, really excited to read it before I met her. But unfortunately, the fires in Pacific Palisades and also all around LA prevented us from actually having this meetup. So that was really, really sad. It was really sad because there was so much devastation by the fire, and a lot of people I knew, were affected by it. So that was really sad. But I also didn't get to meet Laura Dave, which was fine. They are going to reschedule it. So at any rate, this book I gave a 4. It was my first, like I said, Laura Dave book. I haven't read her other one, which I have here, The Last Thing He Told Me. I have not read that one yet, but I aim to. And this one was about a woman who just lost her father. Her father was kind of like this really big wig property owner, and he had married like 3 times. So she was like from his first marriage, and then she married, and then he remarried, and then he had, I think, like 2 kids, and then he like remarried again. So, his daughter is, on just trying to do her thing. She had a really great mom, and she was trying to be successful on her own. She actually has a really cool job. It was something like she develops interior design based on like what's good for the body and the mind. I don't know what that's called, but like it was like a neuro type of architecture. So like the room is designed based on like what's best for like your mental health. And I thought that was a really cool job to have. So here she is, just trying to go about doing her day-to-day job. And one day her dad dies, and her half-brother decides that he wants to figure out what happened to their dad. And he doesn't think it was a suicide. It was ruled a suicide, but he's like, no, this is not a suicide. So the main character and her brother, or her half-brother, are not really close, but they decide to kind of band together and investigate their dad's death. And also we get the backstory of the dad. So we also have the perspective of the dad when he was younger, and just kind of like this woman that he met, before his wives, who he like fell in love with, but they never like fully got together. They were just kind of like friends. And then, it just goes on to kind of like tell a little bit how he met his first wife and his second wife and his third wife. And so we get the dad's backstory a bit, learn a little bit about him while we're learning about kind of how he died. And overall, I would say that this was a good book. I liked it. It was kind of a slow burn. So if you're looking for like a fast-paced thriller, this one is not it. Kind of a slow burn. And at the end, I just felt a little bit like I was expecting kind of a major thing to happen. And when I found out really like what happened behind the dad's death, I was kind of like, okay. It's just kind of like, okay. I don't know. It wasn't anything like explosive or shocking or twisting or anything. And that's why I gave it a 4, because I just felt like it was good. I enjoyed it, but it was a bit of a slow burn, and the ending was like, okay. So I gave it a 4. Have you read any of Laura Dave's books? I'm really excited to actually read The Last Thing He Told Me, because I've heard that one's really good. I know that it's already made into like a series. And I do know that she's making a sequel, or she's written a sequel that's going to come out soon for The Last Thing He Told Me. So I think that'll be really good and interesting for people who really love that first book. So anyway, this was, it was good. The third book I read in January was Before We Were Innocent by Ella Berman. I really, really liked this book. I gave this one a 4.25 because I thought it was going to be a little bit more murdery. I think as a thriller and horror lover, I just want stuff to be more murdery. And this one I picked up because it was about a murder. It was about a death of one of the young girls. So 3 girls go to Greece. One of them dies, and they're like pretty young. They're like probably 18, 19 when they go to Greece, and the setting is kind of like early 2000s. I believe it was 2008. And one of them dies, and then the two girls are basically suspected of murdering the third girl. And so that happens when they're like 18, 19. Fast forward like 10, 12 years or whatever it is. I think it's 10 years, 2018. One of the girls is like mega successful because she's, written a book about like self-love and self-care, and she's kind of like a self-love guru, and she's using what happened to her in Greece as kind of like a way to heal and show people that you can heal from really traumatic situations. The other girl is kind of like living on her own somewhere in the desert, just kind of like living a rundown life, kind of given up on life, given up on taking care of herself. She's kind of a recluse. And so in the beginning of the book, the two girls like get back together to kind of like, because the successful one, it like needs an alibi for something, so the one that was kind of a recluse is like, I'm not trying to be involved in all this, because they were involved in such a horrific thing in Greece when their friend died that, this girl's like, I'm not trying to be involved in all this. And then of course we go back in 2008 and learn about what the girls went through being 18, 19 in Greece, partying, and the media kind of pointed the finger that they killed their best friend. So they're like just trying to live their lives, but everything spins out of control when everyone thinks they're guilty of killing their friend. And, eventually everything gets tied up in the end. But I really enjoyed this book because it took place in the early 2000s. And I was, I'm a millennial, so I was probably like, I was 22 in like 2008, I think, or 23. So I was like maybe 3 or 4 years older than the girls that were in Greece in 2008 in this book. And all like the music and the vibes and like the fashion and stuff, I don't know, it all just kind of like reminded me of the early 2000s, which I thought was really, really cool. I could really resonate with that. And, when you're 18, 19 and you're just kind of like figuring out life, you don't really know what you're doing. You're just trying to like find a boyfriend, if you're me, and like trying to have a good time, So, I resonated with these girls being in Greece, just trying to have like one last fun time before they were going off to college. And I really liked that part about it. I did kind of think it was going to be a little more suspenseful, but it was a little twisty, but I don't know. Also, like in the end, I just kind of was like, wait, what happened? And I kind of was a little bit like, I'm still kind of confused as to what happened. Not like what happened to the friend, but like later when the super successful girl wants an alibi, like what she wants the alibi for, and that whole tricky scenario kind of confused me at the end. But I gave it a 4.25 because I feel like it was better than like a 4-star. 4-star for me is kind of like, oh, it was good, I had a good time, it wasn't a mind blower, but it wasn't terrible. And so I usually give, 4 stars for that, but I feel like this was better than that. But I think I just wanted it to be a little more twisty, horror, visceral, scary. I don't know what I was expecting, but there was something missing from here that I didn't get. So I gave it a 4.25 because it was actually better than what I would consider a 4, but I still felt like it was missing something. But it was good. It was a really good book. And also, I really just liked the relationship between the super successful one and the recluse one. The super successful one, when she was younger, was very toxic, and I just could not stand her character. Her character's name is Joni, by the way. Could not stand her character, and which I think is really, really good writing. When you really get involved in with the character and you just don't like them, I love that's really good writing. Really good character depth and development. Really, really good there too. So that is Before We Were Innocent. I liked it. The next book I read was on Kindle, and it was Happy Bunny and Other Mischiefs. This was a short story horror collection by Rebecca Gransden, and I miss short stories so much. I haven't read a short story collection since college. And what I love about short stories is that the payoff comes really quick. Like, just reading the first few stories in this short story horror collection, I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot how fun it was when a story just like ends and you're like, oh my God, I finished it. You know, like that was the story and you can think about it for a little bit. You know, I'm so used to reading novels where like I read 350 pages, it takes so long to get to that point, and then you're like, wow. And then you open up another book. Short stories are just really, really awesome for getting to the point very quickly. And that is what I appreciated about this short story horror collection. These stories were not very long and they were really, really gruesome, which I really liked. I think the coolest part about it is that this short story horror collection was gruesome, but also had really good writing that was kind of like poetically gruesome. So I really liked that part about this. I think there were a few stories in it that I didn't quite get. They kind of were like Black Mirror. I don't know if you guys have seen that show. I've only seen like 3 or 4 episodes of that show, but it reminded me of that. It was just creepy, weird stories. Like there was this one story where like this woman who had like gone to this party where basically everyone dies and she survives. Which I thought was so cool, because it like she basically like the story starts with her like waking up at this party that where like everyone's just kind of like dead, you know, they were stabbed, they were tortured, they were whatevered, and I was like, holy crap. And then she decides that she is going to shoot money into crowds of people and see if like they kill each other for the money, which I thought was really cool. I thought it was just like so weird, and also like kind of made you question like the things that we love in life and society's addiction to money and like just really weird stuff like that. That was actually like one of my favorite stories. And then there was another story where there was this bunny who like would just didn't know anything about life, just knew that he was this like bunny, and every so often he would go through this portal and he would be like a bunny in a movie. And then he would go back through the portal to like this sad life at a desk with like a little cot. And he would just write in a journal. And he just knew like his whole life, he just goes through this portal, he plays a bunny on screen, and then he goes back to this like really sad life. And I was just like, what is happening? You know, just like weird stuff like that. But I like that stuff. And because that's the kind of stuff that I liked in Black Mirror too. It just like takes everyday situations and makes them weird. So, I mean, that's just what I really liked about this short story horror collection. I feel like there were some that I just didn't get. I know there was like the first story in the collection. It was called Turducken, and it was about this, what I think is like a turkey that like comes to life and has a little adventure. And I don't know why, but for some reason, as the first story, I was like, I didn't quite get that one. And then some of the other ones I didn't quite get, but I feel like the theme of it was just poetic gruesome. I can't explain it. Like weird everyday stuff being made creepy and visceral. And if you like body horror and any kind of like visceral horror, you would like this short story horror collection, because that's kind of what it embodies. And it really took me for a ride. I usually don't read a lot of like body horror stuff. But I just liked the element of weird, scary, gruesome. So if you like that stuff, then you would definitely like this short story horror collection. And I really want to thank Rebecca Gransden for sending me a copy of this to review, because I really, really liked being weirded out. This short story horror collection I gave a 3.5 just because some of the body horror was a bit much for me, but I feel like that's just a personal thing. Overall, I enjoyed being taken for a ride, so thank you so much. And if you like that kind of stuff, you should definitely check it out. The final book that I read in January was my all-time favorite, The God of the Woods. This was a 5-star for me. I know a lot of people really liked this, and I know a lot of people really did not like it. It was kind of like there was people who loved it and people who hated it. I really freaking love this book. It reminded me a little bit of All the Colors of the Dark, but I loved it more than All the Colors of the Dark. I did a pretty in-depth review of this book already on the channel, so I'll link it above and down below. But overall, this book was about a young camper named Barbara who goes missing at a summer camp, and her family owns the summer camp. And there's a ton of characters in this book, And there was also a younger boy who went missing at the summer camp like years earlier, and he was never found. So this girl goes missing, which, you know, she's the younger boy's sister. So like the younger boy went missing back in the, I don't know, 70s or something. And then the older one goes missing later, like 14 years later. It's kind of like, what is going on with this summer camp? Well, the summer camp is actually owned by a very rich people. And so this guy named Peter, he's like the third Peter in a line of Peters. And he owns the land, and he has this wife named Alice who he treats like crap. And, you know, it's kind of like this old family history about like the preserve that they own. They own the summer camp, and there's a ton of characters. And we try to figure out what happened to Barbara. Why was she missing from the summer camp? And we get like 7 different character perspectives. And basically the whole time you're just like, it's kind of like a crime fiction type of story, because you're trying to figure out what happened to Barbara, while you're also getting a lot of the backstory about Barbara and like the life that she had, and the camp counselors' lives, and like, and then the rich people's lives, you know, and then even the people who try to find the little boy from back in the 70s who got lost, you know, their backstory. And so it's kind of like a web of people with lots of character development. I really, really loved it. There was something about it, I think, because every character kind of added a little bit of like a solution to what happened to the missing kids. Like the more you learned about each character, the more you were like, oh, you know, given an unlock as to what happened to these kids. And there was something really comforting about her writing that I just really, really liked, because it wasn't too flowery and poetic, but it was in depth, and it was just really good writing, and it was easy to read. And I just flew through this book. I just loved it so much. And I loved the ambiance of like being in the woods. And I actually had like my woodsy vibe on my TV, just like with the birds and the creek and the water, just while I read this book, and it just added kind of like a nice woodsy element. So if you are going on a camping trip, or if you're going to a summer camp, which I think would be awesome, you should read this book, because I just, I loved it. I really love crime fiction, you know, a whodunit, you know, and I really love a good missing person story. And this just like had all of that for me. It was also really sad. So I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 5 stars, and I just want to hug it. And I also just bought Long Bright River as well, because I think that's going to be a series coming out maybe in March of this year. So I want to read more Liz Moore. I love her writing, and I really like it when people go missing, because it's like, what happened to them? I love those types of stories. So that one got me, and I feel like now I'm a Liz Moore fan. So that's it. Those were the books I read in January. What did you read in January? I would love to know. And if you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.